between urban development and agricultural production has been raging for years, but it seems to be reaching new heights as the real estate developers encroach on fertile lands to transform them into sprawling residential complexes, malls, and commercial centers. Across the country, prime agricultural lands are disappearing at an alarming rate, giving way to concrete jungles and high-rise buildings.
Across the country, arable lands are disappearing very quickly, and they're being replaced by buildings serving various purposes. The once serene landscapes now bear the sights and sounds of heavy machinery and cranes piercing the sky. Farmers in some parts of Accra and the central region lament the harsh realities of losing their farmlands. They're not the only ones being affected by rapid urbanization and the quest to give Ghanaians places of abode and centers of business. The larger population stands the risk of not getting food to eat if the lands being used for agriculture are being taken away. Imagine the impact on Ghana's overall economy if agriculture is hampered by the absence of farmlands. The farmers are now at the mercy of landowners and real estate developers who are pushing them out of business. They barely now have any more fertile land to work on, whereas in years past, these parcels of land had provided them with income and, in some cases, national recognition in the form of prizes and awards. Citi News went to the Owutu-Senya districts in the central region to interact with some of these farmers, and they gave more details on how they are losing their farmlands and what this meant for their livelihoods.
And so more no more banner one of Bankra or Swa. Now was there, or more a good do no banner free so. I'm not catching chairman on his out. Those who do near money in a free so. And your farmers be farming for full view, and no more good motive from your farm back was here. Nipa wa dua mancha na boy wi akasa wo betu wo dua okru eye flowers wo betwa o mka chese ombra na ombra metu de open freeze no mo be grade ampane pade chen akonu ma grade farm ni nyina
eye real estate for
ma grade ni nyina ene omo a omutu gravels estate developers na omo omutu gravels ene esa adwuma no
na ahemfo ho na mo je eye nsase no de no maka fa
ano de okwa omo nka hwe nchire obi o mechire nsase no omo no omo aton o lesi no maton
ase na obeto ye ebusua sase ana se utofi baby ana ulisi
ohima me pacha ani die mo han de o maton nti o mato ato ho no obu ha oni no de ahye wonsa se ne bi obi nsta me fa akiri meton
na odo wo ha dada na
me pacha ani
fie ni a ya he eni ana na odo wo ha
o bi do ye doso e bi do be 6 years 7 years e kan ko be 10 years ni
na odo ansa real estate for anase omo sisi adan no ebebeje ye no mo de hye mu nsem
ipacho ne yedo dada anse ne bi omo beto e de hye nsem
for no eba ye no omo kan bibi kire mo se bi ombe ma musike bi na mo nso makope baabia adom mu no ba ye nana
ipacho dabi
nti ene mutue mu sa
ipacho
na wetimi ni empanyimfo bi MC DC bi e wo ha itimi na omo atwetwe nkomo so ombe ma mo mwae bi
ohima agrikfo ne ba nenso no nokre obienti mekana se wom so baenti mekan bisa nchire.
But what has led to this situation? Why are real estate companies now being a threat to the agricultural sector when it essentially feeds every single Ghanaian? Here are the thoughts of the Secretary General of the Agricultural Workers Union. He explains the dynamics of farmland ownership, lease of lands, and the increase of activities related to real estate in Ghana. He explains the nuances of farmland ownership and leasing.
You don't necessarily need to own the land. You need the land for agricultural purpose. So they can lease it to you to do that. Now, what we have experienced is that farmers who have had land to crop and to do their activities over a time lose it because the landowners decide to give it up to what? Estate developers or for other purposes. And without, regulation, without recourse to, some rules, because if you plan, we could say that this particular area of land should be used for maize production. So you are the landowner, all right, no problem. You can lease it out to anybody who wants to use for maize farming. And as a country, we cannot afford that particular land should be given up for estate development, even though it is your land.
What about the entity that supervises the activities of real estate companies? Samuel Amagaibo is the head of the Ghana Real Estate Developers Association, and he explains the nuances of land zoning and how it may affect farmlands.
Settlement is getting wider, and so there have been rezoning. So people will not have deliberately taken over farmlands. It's just that there have been rezoning where that these lands have now been marked for residential settlements. And so those who were originally occupying those lands for farming purposes will have to go further if it is legally, acquired, like I've explained. But those who are also just grabbing land anywhere and using them for residential, over there I will blame it on our land managers, because we have an institution that is supposed to ensure that land usage is in accordance with our plan. So if a real estate developer goes to seek such lands and wants to develop, he needs to permit. And if he goes to the permitting authority, they will tell him that that land is not meant for residential settlement, it's meant for farming. And he must be told, unless he apply, you can also apply on your own for reuse. And if the district assembly agrees and gives it to you, then you haven't done anything wrong.
Yet, planning and policies have been set in place for farmers to grow their crops. While we understand the concerns raised by farmers and environmentalists, urban expansion is necessary to accommodate growing populations and stimulate economic growth. We strive to balance development with sustainability, incorporating green spaces and eco-friendly practices into our projects. It is clear that, in principle, there are rules and regulations surrounding the conduct of real estate companies. There are also laws on land use and planning that should guide where these companies can operate and what kind of development can happen in their respective areas of operation. These laws are to be enforced by the local authorities across the country. The Deputy Director of the Land Use and Spatial Planning Authority explains how zoning will help solve most of these issues between farmlands and real estate developers that keep cropping up. He reiterates how the three-tier planning framework put in place by LUPSA will help all stakeholders involved to plan ahead for land zoning and segregation so we do not lose all our lands to real estate developers.
We need to collaborate with the Ministry of Agriculture so that they can give us data on areas which are zoned for agriculture. Then because we are also under the Ministry of Local Government, the districts are also under the Ministry of Local Government. The law gives us power to issue circulars and through the minister. So the minister can issue circulars, areas which are reserved for agriculture. The assembly shouldn't rezone those areas. And also the assembly should go ahead and prepare these structure plans and SDFs so as to zone areas for agriculture so that we protect these areas.
Madam Anita enlightens us on the roles of the local government and land acquisition in these areas. She explains that though farming is a greater part of our lives, she believes in the proper allocation of lands for various purposes and the roles each play in the community and the nation at large.
The municipal assembly was given almost 100 acres for the assembly space. And when the space was given, people started farming without seeking for any permission from anybody. Yes, of course, we have to have some full security. But mind you, the space is for the assembly and it's for a purpose. So if you start farming on the space and the assembly needs the space for a development, it doesn't mean that we are coming to take over the farmlands. That is not the issue. But I don't know where they are farming and they think that estate developers are coming to claim the space. Not what I've heard of, but the farmlands that are here are for individuals, apart from the land space that we have for the municipal assembly.
The Minister for Works and Housing, Kojo Nkrumah, opined that land banks that will allow for estate developers to move into these enclaves to develop those kind of settlements required for them and also provide the necessary policy incentives that make it easier for the private real estate to develop in those enclaves. Mr. Nkrumah stated that spatial planning was not being better regulated. He stated that the Land Use and Spatial Planning Authority would get stronger over time and better supervise what land to use and what not to use.
It was observed a while back that spatial planning and land use was not being properly regulated. And so the Land Use and Spatial Planning Authority was created as an upgrade of its previous entity to better regulate that sector. It's a bit early in the day, and so the problems have run ahead of the solutions. But our expectation is that the Land Use and Spatial Planning Authority will get stronger as the times go by, and they'll be able to bring some more weight to bear on where you can and cannot use what parcels of land for what purpose. And we are hopeful that they can quickly be a bit tougher in that space.